there's this notion that's been like going around like crazy. I want to say it's kind of like the biggest it's ever been right now, that everyone needs to get off the internet, just like full stop. Like this internet stuff is bad and needs to stop. I think like honestly, like there's definitely a good element to that. Like we could use some of that, right? But specifically, there's this notion that like artists really need to get off the internet. Like it exists in all aspects of all, you know, communities on the internet. I'm seeing it, but the art side of things, I feel like everyone is like, if you're an artist, just put that phone down and never pick it up again. And I do think that there's a little bit of overcorrecting here. And I'm kind of surprised that I'm coming here saying this, because for the last couple of years, like obviously privately, I've never done any of this publicly, but like I've been a huge hater of the whole like internet art thing, in terms of more so like, oh, I would get like my friends text me like, oh my god, TikTok just inspired me to do the coolest thing, and they just like followed a drawing guide on TikTok, and I'm like, you know, that kind of annoyed me. So like I've kind of been like a subtle hater of art online for a couple of years now, but now that like we're here and everyone's like fully pushing back against it, I almost feel like there's a little bit of overcorrection going on. Or maybe I'm just a contrarian. That's definitely possible too. I could just be being a contrarian here. But either way, I think we're overcorrecting. I think that this sentiment is maybe also misplaced, right? Because like I've always thought that like taking inspiration from the internet in terms of like letting the internet make your ideas for you is bad. But also that's a very strong minority of people. You know what I mean? And like my friend was just being annoying that week when they sent that to me. So like it was never that deep. But now I feel like people are saying it in terms of like a very inspired sense of like, oh no, if you're an artist and you're using the internet, like it's basically like having a diet based on McDonald's. And that's like a big thing going around now, is this media diet thing. And I just, for the life of me, to be honest, I just don't think it's that deep. I think we're overcorrecting to an extent where we don't need to, because it's, you know, turned into a sentiment and a phrase, create more than you consume, right? And I think that's nice. I think that's good. And I think if the internet is like, if you're spending all day scrolling and not like making anything and you want to be, yes, for sure, get off the internet. Like I said, I think there's a nice element to this of like, we could all be a little less online, right? But this idea that like, oh no, you need to carefully curate a media diet, I think is almost harmful, because as an artist, I don't want to use the word shelter yourself, but to kind of close yourself off from the world too much is bad. You know, I think there's a good extent to it of like, you don't want to be so online or so inspired by the internet that you're directly copying people. I think that that's true. I think that that's nice. And I think also that's good for your creativity. So if you're somebody that finds like when you're scrolling all the time and you just come across these ideas and you can't help but make stuff like them, or you're too influenced by it, yes, 100%. And that's the biggest topic here, is almost like, you know, everyone's a different type of artist. You know, Andy Warhol painted with like 5 TVs on around him, but other artists need complete silence to paint at all. You know, I am able to come here and paint a little thing here every day, but I think a lot of people would be like, no, that's a really bad way to create. But it works, you know, everyone has a different way of doing things. So 100%, that's like a very important thing to acknowledge here. With that being said, that's almost why this is kind of a bad sentiment, right? Because everyone does have a different way of doing things, and for some reason right now, we're almost acting like it's a broad brush bad thing to be influenced by the internet. The fact of the matter is, and I don't know if I guess I can call it kind of a fact, yeah, is like, artists have always been inspired by the world around them. That's where art movements come from. We've always been, you know, taking things from the world around us and putting it into our art. You know, Dadaism came from World War I. And World War I, if you're in America or anywhere where conflict wasn't directly happening, you're consuming at the time through the media, right? You're consuming it through newspapers, you're consuming it through Do they have, I guess, would it be radio back then is how they're getting it? Either way, you get the point. You're not directly seeing it happen. You're consuming it through the media. Unless a lot of artists did go and fight in the war too. But for the most part, a lot of people back home were, right? A lot of artists would be doing that. So to have like the modern equivalent of that be something that's seen as so negative, I think is almost a disservice to what art has always been. I think, obviously there's a lot of debate around like the biggest question ever, and maybe this will be a Paint and Talk. Maybe I'll do like a special Paint and Talk for this question, because it's something I want to do one day, but I don't have the gumption to do it, to be honest. Is like, does life imitate art, or does art imitate life? Short and simple answer for me is I think both. Like, I think both things are very true, right? But I think the biggest message for me is that you can't have one without the other. Art cannot exist without life, and I don't think life would be what it is without art. That's my answer to that question, at least. So, with that being said, I think that to say, life is now being consumed, not so much directly, but the world around us is being consumed through social media. Whether like most of your life is online or not, that's definitely a personal thing. That changes for everybody. But life is being consumed through social media. If I were to ask you, or anybody I know, how would you see the Nazi salute that Elon Musk did at the inauguration? You would tell me Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, maybe Snap if you got a friend that was really into that. But like, you would tell me the name of a social media, right? The world around us is being consumed through social media. So why would we try and shut ourselves off to it rather than saying, I should take inspiration from this thing? I think the problem with a lot of people and what they would say to that, well, actually just what my friend said to that when I was talking to him about this, is that like the problem for a lot of people though, is they can't control that. Like a lot of the times they're not going to be taking inspiration from the large political event that happened that they'll have a message about in their art. They'll rather be just, overly influenced by a style of painting they see that they really like, and they'll only make stuff based on that. Or they'll be thinking too much about audience reception to a thing when they're making it. There's a million ways you could go with it, but the short and sweet is they're too influenced by it. And I think that that's a very real issue. That's actually something I've gone through before, for sure, too. Is like, okay, I have all these great ideas, and I'm getting them from being inspired, but sometimes it's almost like the inspiration controls me versus me controlling the inspiration, right? That's definitely a thing I've gone through. And for me, the answer was more than anything fixing my relationship with social media. What I did, and there's so many ways you can do this now, they have these blocker apps, they have a million different ways to do this, is to, like, basically, we're all in, like, the reason I think social media is bad is because it's controlling us versus us controlling it a lot of the time, right? Back to it being the new version of the media and how we're consuming the world around us, the biggest difference between Instagram and the newspaper, well, not the biggest, but one of the giant differences, is that the newspaper was an object you would go and grab. Social media is a thing that's on our phone that we, for one reason or another, like, basically have to have on us all the time, whether it's because your inbox is on there, if you're working, or in school too. I know a lot of college kids need to be checking their inbox a lot. Or if you're younger, your parents need to text you. Maybe, your friends, you gotta stay in touch with them somehow. You basically need to have your phone on you. I know there's gonna be like one annoying person who's like, well, it's not really that hard if you just give up your phone. Like, that like genre of guy who like is like in this generation, but loves to be like, no, I'm not addicted to my phone, guys. And like, they'll make sure you know it. Oh wait, am I kind of that guy though? No, because like, I'm still on all these things. I just don't like the way I do it basically is I make sure that these things are something I can like control in one way or another. So for me, what I did is I took an old iPad mini and I just like loaded that with all the social medias. That way I don't have them on my phone, but I can still go on them. I can still like use them. And what it's done is it's made it so like I'm only on these things for the same way it would be like watching TV. Like, it's like, oh, okay, I have nothing to do right now. Let's go on Instagram for 30 minutes. I find that to be a much healthier way. Obviously, I was lucky enough to have an old iPad mini that like barely runs still somewhere. So if you don't though, there's all these blocker apps. There's a million ways to do it where you can make sure that you have control over your consumption rather than your consumption having control of you. And I think if as an artist you can do that, if you can make that happen, that it is like it makes sure it's great for your art. Like, I genuinely think it's so good because shutting yourself off to the world around you is not the answer. I don't think any artist has ever done that and like really made something great. And this idea that like artists are these monks that need to like sit in silence and just like meditate and be like, oh, this next beautiful spiritual project has come to me. That's fucking bullshit. That's not how any of this works. Like, it's not that deep. I think you've fallen for a romanticized image of an artist. Listen, are there like geniuses? Yeah, for sure. But like, if you're somebody who just like likes doing this stuff and like you have fun doing it, it's never that deep. Just have some fun, paint a terrible green mess in front of you. It's great. It's the best thing ever. It's the bee's knees to paint green things that like you had an idea for, but now it's going somewhere else, and that's awesome. I could be scrolling reels while I do this. No, but to completely shelter yourself off is not a good idea. You need inspiration from somewhere, and it's also, in my opinion, important to make your art modern, right? If you just want to like sit and learn to paint Renaissance paintings and just paint holy imagery and fruit baskets and like get into that hall of the Met or whatever, like just paint normal things, go ahead, more power to you. But for a lot of people that I know at least, they're like, no, I want to paint something new, I want to paint something fun, I want to try and do my own thing. If you're one of those people, which I would venture to guess a lot of people are, because that's mostly what I've encountered at least, you need to know what's going on in the world. Like, you're not gonna like, there's no such thing as an artist that has just sit in silence and birthed an artistic revolution. No one's just like Andy Warhol wasn't sitting around and going like, oh my God, I came up with pop art. No, like everyone else was doing it around him. He's happened to become the most famous and in many people's opinion, the best pop artist. But he didn't come up with it in a void. Same thing with Cubism. So many people were doing exactly what Picasso and Matisse were doing at the time. And it's a movement. That's why movements happen. That's why these people are famous. But I think it's a quote that Warhol said, or maybe it was his like manager that said it, of like, becoming an artist is never about being the best. It's about jumping into a vacuum and making the most noise. And that is a very pessimistic way to look at art. Like, I don't like that because it's just sad, but like, it's kind of true. There's an element of truth to that, of like, if you want to be a big artist, you got to be popular. If you just want to make good, new, fun art, you got to know what's going on. Like, sitting in a void is not going to do you any favors. Going out and experiencing things will do you some favors, and going out and experiencing things and consuming what's going on in the world definitely won't hurt. Like, that's definitely not a bad idea. It's actually, from what I found, to be very helpful. And that's why I think that it's not so much that artists need to, do this monk practice, go in monk mode and transform their relationship and get off all online stuff. I'd almost say what you need to do is not so much create more than you consume, even though it's a nice phrase, I like it. I don't think you so much need to do that as much as I think you just need to create a lot, or just like have fun. I think all this stuff about like getting fully offline and never taking inspiration and never being inspired by the internet is like just trying to recreate a time that we're not in right now. The internet is where things are, and artists are always where things are, making new things. So I don't like it either. I mean, listen, it'd probably be much nicer if I don't know though, because I do like talking while I paint. But like, I get the idea of like, it's a very romantic image of like being Picasso in the mid 20th century, going to a studio and just painting all night in your own solitude, and then the only time that you ever are accessed is when the newspapers talk to you or you're interviewed. Like, that's a romanticized image that has a degree of like niceness to it, but also like that's just not how things are anymore. You know, if you're fortunate enough to be of that status where you can do that, that's genuinely so cool. That's awesome. But we're just not in that era anymore, and pretending that we are is only going to get you, I don't know. Maybe all this is wrong though. The main message is everyone's different, so just make stuff, you know. But anyways, this is the painting. I wanted to go for a like have the crevices of the original teal color I painted be a darker shade, and then almost have like, I wanted to look like they were ridges coming out of something. That just didn't work though, mainly because this is a different hue than the other green I used. I was just using what was left on the palette because paint's expensive and I wanted to use what's on that palette. I respectfully, like, I'll just be so real with you guys, like that is the reason why I do make sure I'm using the same colors a couple days in a row, because having this much dried paint on the palette, that's $50 right there, and like, you know, I don't, paint's expensive, guys, so that's why I do this. The colors ended up not working. It made something kind of cool though, like it's a very messy look, but I still think it has enough visual interest to be kind of cool. So check this out over on the Instagram, you guys know the drill. Angles, all that. And until next time, guys, gals, and pals, my name is Max Dice, and this has been Paint and Talk episode 52. I'm here every morning painting and talking with you all.